Humans have used scaffolding ever since peoples used them for painting cave ceilings over 17,000 years ago. However, from ancient times to the present, accidents have occurred from falls from either erecting or using scaffolding, resulting in injury and even death. Hazardous conditions are falls from elevations due to lack of fall protection, unsafe access, slips, collapse of scaffolding due to instability, overloading, bad planking, or tools falling from a scaffold. Injuries occur because of a lack of training, lack of necessary equipment, improper use of equipment, inappropriate work behaviors, or a combination of these elements. To prevent accidents and ensure safety, the roofing industry needs to train its workers in proper erection, operation, and dismantling of scaffolds. Though there are basic types of scaffolds, supported, suspended, and aerial lifts, this presentation will only cover the most common supported scaffold used in the roofing industry, the tube and coupler scaffold. It has one or more platforms supported by rigid load-bearing members such as mud seals, base plates, posts, or uprights, cross bracing, couplings, runners, platforms, and guardrail systems. Due to their strength, these scaffolds are frequently used by roofers where heavy loads need to be carried or where multiple platforms must reach several stories high. These scaffolds can be assembled in multiple directions, making them the preferred option for work surfaces with irregular dimensions and/or contours. 1. Basic scaffolding elements and erection requirements. 2. OSHA general requirements for scaffolds. 3. Safe operation of scaffolding. 4. Training workers. Section 1. Basic scaffolding elements and erection requirements. A scaffold is an elevated temporary work platform and its supporting structure used for supporting the work crew and materials, or both, to aid the roofing industry. Today's standard lightweight tube and coupler scaffold, which was invented and marketed since the mid-1950s, is a unit of various sizes and heights that can be assembled easily by a couple of workers. Scaffold components. Tube and coupler scaffolding is made of the following 5 components. Component number 1, base plate. Load-bearing base for the scaffold. There are many types of scaffold support base plates. Component number 2, tubes. Tubes with connectors serve as the upright component of a scaffold and transfer the entire mass of the structure to the base plate and are made either of galvanized steel or aluminum. Component number 3, cross braces. Cross bracing ensures structural integrity, but not all tube and coupler scaffolds have them. Component number 4, platforms. Platforms are the working area of the scaffold, except when used as a walkway. Platform planks can be properly sized sawwood, prefabricated metal, or similar materials, as long as they are manufacturer approved for the task. Use only scaffold grade wood. Platforms must be fully decked and able to support without failure its own weight and that of the workers and at least 4 times the intended load. There should be no gaps between the adjacent planks or deck platform units greater than 1 inch, or between the platform and the uprights. Each end of the platform must extend over its support by at least 6 inches. Platforms and walkways must be at least 18 inches wide. If less than 18 inches, a personal fall arrest system is used to arrest a worker's fall. An employee must be trained how to properly use a personal fall arrest system. Workers should always wear hard hats on a platform or while around a scaffold. Component number 5, a guardrail system. Top rails, mid rails, and toe boards. A guardrail system must be installed on all open sides and ends of platforms. They must be completed before roofers can use the platform. Top rails must be able to withstand 200 pounds of force either downward or horizontally at any point along its top edge. The height of a top rail must be 38 to 45 inches of maximum height. Mid-rails must be able to withstand 150 pounds of force either downward or horizontally at any point along its top edge. A mid-rail height should be halfway between top rail and platform. Scaffolds above 10 feet in height from a surface should have toe boards to keep debris or objects from falling and hurting workers below. Toe boards should be at least 3.5 inches high on all open sides. A toe board must be able to withstand 50 pounds of force in any downward or horizontal direction. It must be 3.5 inches high from the walking or working surface. There are 10 steps to erecting a scaffold. Step number 1. Use footings that are level, sound, rigid, and capable of supporting the load without settlement or displacement. Step number 2. Plumb and brace poles, legs, posts, frames, and uprights to prevent swaying and displacement. Step number 3. Position the first level of bracing as close to the base as possible. Step number 4. Plumb and level the scaffold as it is being erected. Step number 5. Fasten all couplers and/or connections securely before assembling the next level. Step number 6. Install guys, ties, and braces according to the manufacturer's recommendations. Step number 7. When platform units are abutted together to create a long platform, each abutted end must rest on a separate support surface. Step number 8. Once erected, provide toe boards on all railed sides to prevent falling object hazards. Step number 9. Front edge of platform should not be more than 14 inches from the work unless using guardrails and/or a PFAS. Step number 10. Barricade area below a scaffold to forbid entry into that area. OSHA provides general requirements for all scaffolds, including capacity, platform construction, criteria for supported scaffolds, access, use, fall protection, falling object protection, and training areas. OSHA standards protect roofers from scaffold-related hazards such as falls, falling objects, structure instability, electrocution, or overloading. OSHA standards also address training and various types of scaffolds as well as other matters. There are 5 hazards in the roofing industry associated with scaffolds. Falls from elevation caused by slipping, unsafe access, and lack of fall protection. Falls may occur while climbing on or off the scaffold while working on unguarded scaffold platforms, or when scaffold platforms or planks fail. Hazard 2. Employees struck by falling tools or debris. Hazard 3. Electrocution from overhead power lines. Hazard 4. Scaffold collapse caused by instability or overloading. Hazard 5. Bad plank giving way. Scaffolds must support their own weight and 4 times the maximum intended load. The maximum intended load is the total of all persons, equipment, tools, and materials and transmitted loads anticipated to be on the scaffold at any one time. Verify the scaffold loads, including tools and other equipment. Loads should be kept to a minimum and materials should be removed when the scaffold is not in use. Scaffold safe operation. Chances of injury are greatest when erecting and dismantling scaffolds because they are incomplete and not secure. Employees involved with setting up the scaffold or near must wear hard hats. A competent person determines whether erectors should wear a PFAS while erecting or dismantling scaffolding. Chances of injury are highest when climbing onto or off a scaffold. Never use a scaffold unless approved by a competent or qualified person. Safe access must be provided to all scaffold platforms that are more than 2 feet above or below a surface. There are many types of permitted access, such as portable and straight ladders, hook-on ladders, or fixed and direct access from another surface. Some scaffold frames have end frames with ladders. Never access a scaffold by climbing on the cross bracing. Always provide a safe way for the workers to get on and off the scaffold without climbing on the cross braces. PFAS must be used on any scaffold 10 feet or higher above any level, and the PFAS must meet OSHA standards. Basic rule is if a worker on a scaffold can fall more than 10 feet, then protect them either by guardrails and/or a PFAS. Scaffolds should never be moved horizontally while workers are on them unless specifically designed for that purpose. Before moving a scaffold, secure all materials and vacate workers from the platform. The possibility of electrocution is a serious consideration when working on a scaffold. Watch for overhead electrical lines, which can put roofers especially in danger of electrocution. There should be 10 feet of clearance between the scaffold assembly and the electrical source. This distance applies to any part of the scaffold, including tools, equipment, or material that might be used on the scaffold. Check the clearance prior to erecting the scaffold. Do not work on snow or ice-covered platforms during storms or high winds. Portable electrical equipment such as tools, power cords, or generators can also pose a serious electrical hazard for workers on and/or around scaffolds. A short in an electrical equipment can energize a metal frame scaffold and its components. Workers who receive an electrical shock can lose their balance and fall. Therefore, all such equipment should be protected by GFCI or other types of grounding, and workers should wear and utilize fall protection. Scaffolds must be designed by a qualified or competent person and built and loaded to design and erected by trained employees. The erected scaffolds must support its own weight and at least 4 times the maximum intended load. To accomplish this, the scaffold design must incorporate a realistic assessment of maximum intended loads on the scaffold at all stages of erection and loading. Select the right size scaffold for each job. Scaffolds are generally rated as light, medium, or heavy duty. Light duty scaffolds can support a limited number of workers and hand tools, 25 pounds per square foot. Medium-duty scaffolds must be able to safely hold workers, hand tools, and roofing materials being installed, 50 pounds per square foot. Heavy-duty scaffolds must support workers, tools, and the weight of stored materials, 75 pounds per square foot. A competent person is defined as an individual who is capable through training and experience of identifying existing and predictable hazards related to assembling, operating, and disassembling scaffolds. A qualified person is an individual who possesses a recognized degree, certificate of professional standing, or has extensive knowledge, training, and experience in order to resolve problems related to the scaffold work on a project. Scaffolds can only be erected, moved, dismantled, or altered under the supervision of a competent or qualified person. Erectors are trained employees involved in erecting, disassembling, moving, repairing, maintaining, and inspecting a scaffold to recognize its hazards and the correct procedures to use. Duties of competent or qualified person. They determine the type of scaffolding needed for a job and design the load requirements for the scaffold, including determining the maximum load of the scaffold. They assure that the scaffold has a good and proper foundation and that the scaffold is not near any electrical hazards. They ensure a scaffold has proper access when erecting or dismantling them, and that a scaffold is structurally sound when intermixing components from different manufacturers. They train employees in erecting or disassembly, moving, repairing, operating, altering, and maintaining scaffolding, and to recognize associated work hazards. They select and direct erectors or qualified workers to conduct work on scaffolds, and they determine the feasibility of fall protection. Ultimately, they determine when and if it is safe to work on or to use a scaffold. They ensure that every worker on a scaffold has and uses a PFAS when required. They are responsible for inspecting scaffoldings regularly for visible defects before each day's work and after any occurrence that could affect the scaffold's integrity. Any part of a scaffold that has been damaged must be repaired or replaced, braced or removed from the site, and serviced until OSHA strength requirements are met. OSHA requires 2 groups of individuals to be trained by a qualified or competent person regarding scaffold safety: those that erect and dismantle scaffolds and those that use scaffolding. Subjects taught by qualified or competent person to erectors should include the following: proper procedures for erecting, disassembling, and repair of different types of scaffolding utilized in the roofing industry. Understanding the design criteria for using scaffolding, including calculating and verifying the maximum load capacity and the maximum intended load for the scaffolding. Proper use of the scaffold and the nature of the scaffold hazards in the work area and corrective action for dealing with hazards. Proper handling of materials on scaffold and any other pertinent requirements. OSHA required training and retraining. OSHA requires training and retraining under the following conditions: change at work site that presents a hazard for which the employee has not been trained, change in scaffold type, fall protection system, or falling object equipment that present a hazard to that employee who had not been previously trained. Inadequacies in employee work indicating they have not retained the initial training. Retrain workers if you have reason to believe that a worker lacks the necessary skills or understanding to safely erect or disassemble or use scaffolding. The dates and times of training sessions and the names of workers attending and completing a training session should be on file and updated as necessary. Scaffolds will continue to be used by the roofing industry for some time to come. Workers have a right to a safe workplace. Never take scaffolding for granted. Always follow OSHA rules and standards for safe scaffold erection, operation, and disassembly. Protect workers from falling objects or tools. Remember to ensure stable access for workers. Remember to inspect the scaffold before each work shift and determine fall protection requirements. Always follow scaffolding manufacturers' rules and regulations when using their equipment. If you see an unsafe condition around a scaffold, always report it to the job's competent person and/or to a supervisor. Be a proactive member of your roofing team and company. Prevent injuries.